The Dons had daughters, real black women who ruled the underworld. Picture this. A hush falls over the room. A jazz record spins behind velvet curtains. Smoke floats through the amber light of a crystal chandelier. The club is full, but no one speaks when she walks in. She's wearing a floor-length mink and a blood-red silk dress that touches the ground like royalty. Her hand cradles a lit cigar, not for warmth, but for power. Two men shift nervously at the bar, whispering her name. One of them owes her money. The other is thinking of skipping town. She takes a seat in the back booth alone, but not unprotected. There's no gun in sight. She doesn't need one, not when fear does the talking. This isn't fiction. It's the real story of black women who didn't just survive the streets. They ran them. They built drug pipelines, ruled gambling rackets, bribed police, and made even the mob step back. And yet their names were buried beneath layers of erasure, racism, and fear. Until now, Stephanie St. Clair, Harlem's numbers queen. She was born on Christmas Day in 1887 in Guadeloupe, a French colony in the Caribbean where black girls were expected to clean floors and vanish quietly. Stephanie St. Clair did neither. By the time she reached Harlem in the early 1900s, she didn't speak English, but she spoke money and power. She built one of the most profitable illegal enterprises in Harlem, a numbers bank that paid out to everyday black people when banks in Wall Street wouldn't. Her operation pulled in the modern equivalent of hundreds of thousands each week. And while the money gave her clout, it was her mind and mouth that gave her control. St. Clair placed full-page ads in the Amsterdam News, exposing crooked cops and warning the community about police abuse. She educated people on their legal rights. She defied white power both in uniform and out. When the infamous Dutch Schultz, backed by the Italian mob, tried to take over Harlem's numbers racket, Stephanie refused to surrender. She didn't just say no, she said it publicly. The streets ran red, informants were murdered, her collectors were beaten. Harlem was at war. Schultz was eventually gunned down in 1935. The streets believed Stephanie had orchestrated it, though no one ever proved it. But what's not up for debate is this. She outlived him, and she won. Stephanie was harassed constantly by the NYPD. Her phones were tapped. She was arrested repeatedly, and she was betrayed by friends turned informants and employees flipped by fear. But she never caved. She stepped away from crime later in life and turned her energy towards civil rights. She died quietly in 1969. But her legacy? That was written in the concrete of Harlem, where she once made the Mafia blink. Thelma Wright, the cocaine queen of Philadelphia. In the 1980s, Philly was a battlefield. The war on drugs had turned inner cities into pressure cookers. And when her husband, Jackie Wright, a known heroin trafficker, was found murdered in 1986, most assumed Thelma Wright would retreat, mourn, disappear. But Thelma wasn't built for retreat. Born and raised in Philadelphia, she came from a religious, middle-class family. She went to Catholic school. She had dreams. But the streets have a way of rewriting women's destinies when the man they love dies violently. Rather than watch the empire her husband built fall into chaos, Thelma stepped in. She didn't just maintain the operation, she expanded it. Using a network that spanned from Los Angeles to Philadelphia, she moved heroin and cocaine with deadly precision. Her business acumen stunned the men who underestimated her. She organized shipments, laundered money through front businesses, and negotiated deals with suppliers who never expected a woman, let alone a grieving widow, to sit at the table. But success drew enemies. Rivals resented her rise. Whisper campaigns began. And soon, federal agents were watching. Her phones were tapped, her shipments followed, and the people she trusted began to crack. One associate flipped to save himself. Another disappeared. Her name started appearing in reports. Faces she once trusted now looked like threats. And so Thelma walked away. Not in handcuffs, not in a coffin, but by choice. She left the game and became a motivational speaker, a truth teller, a survivor. But in her day, she wasn't a wife who inherited a kingdom. She was a queen who earned her own throne. Jemiker Thompson, the crack empress of Los Angeles. In the 1980s, South Central Los Angeles was ground zero for America's crack epidemic. It was fast money, fast death. And behind it all stood a woman who'd already seen what violence could take. Jemiker Thompson's father was gunned down when she was 8. Her family was evicted shortly after. That pain didn't fade. It transformed. By her teens, she was laundering drug money. And by her 20s, she controlled a major piece of LA's crack distribution, operating with a level of efficiency the feds couldn't ignore. She dressed like a mogul, ran crews like a general, and made deals with cartels who saw her not as a novelty, but as a threat. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her orders traveled through lieutenants who managed stash houses, enforcers, and couriers. She managed millions in cash. Her product moved between states. Her street name? Untouchable. But in 1993, that name cracked. One of her closest allies was arrested and flipped. He wore a wire, passed along codes, gave up drop spots and bank details. The feds came down like thunder. She was arrested and sentenced to 15 years. Inside prison, Jemiker experienced a spiritual awakening. And when she walked out of those gates, she left the game behind. Today, she's an evangelist, teaching others about the trap of fast money and false loyalty. But anyone who knew her in the 80s remembers this. She was a boss long before she was redeemed. Watched, betrayed, broken open. The system didn't rush in, it waited. Federal agents spent years building cases. Phones were tapped, couriers were squeezed, children were used as leverage. And when the empire cracked, it wasn't bullets that brought these women down, it was betrayal. From lovers, from lieutenants, from family. What they built was seen as too threatening, too visible, too black, too female. So they were dismantled, not just by courts, but by erasure. The legacy that won't die. These weren't side chicks, they weren't flukes, they weren't fairy tales. They were strategists, rulers, dons in heels and diamonds, Stephanie, Thelma, Jemiker. They understood power in a world that never wanted them to have any. And they took it anyway. Their stories are not just crime stories. They are American stories, told in hushed voices, forgotten news reports, and cash-stained memories still circulating in the cities they once ruled. Disclaimer: this Scope News report is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. Viewer discretion is advised due to graphic subject matter, including drugs, violence, and betrayal. All individuals featured are real historical figures, and their stories are based on verified public records, news archives, interviews, and first-hand accounts. Some scenes may be dramatized for narrative clarity. This report does not glorify criminal behavior, but seeks to document the suppressed stories of black women who built, ruled, and ultimately survived the underworld.